Who's ready to get hit in the feels? If you woke up in the body of the opposite sex, what would you do first? Well, I'm sure that'll be in this movie. This is the legendary heartbreak movie of anime in the last decade. This is 2017's Your Name. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinion on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. And for those of you that need to hear this is just a movie. All stunts are for the sake of story and shouldn't be attempted on your own. Viewer discretion is advised. We open up with meteors falling to the ground, and one of them lands right in the middle of a huge harbor. Then we hear Mitsuha talking about how her emotions seem to go off of a dream she can't remember. And Taki wakes up saying essentially the same thing. The two of them make the train, and they feel like they're longing for someone that's out there. They remember that the feeling started on the night that a meteor fell from the sky, and they look up at the same one. Okay, so we get our opening credits music video here, and those of you that have already watched this know I have to give credit to Radwimps. If you take a second to actually listen to the soundtrack without watching the movie, you can still feel the emotion behind each track. Not too many people can accomplish that. One morning, Mitsuha wakes up to the sound of her phone, and she can hear herself crying out to Taki. In a quick little flashback, we see that the day they took the train, they ended it with her quickly crying out her name to Taki. Suddenly, Mitsuha shoots up out of bed, and she looks around her room. Then she looks down to her body and she checks her body. Well, Mitsuha's sister, Yotsuha, opens the door to check on her sister, and she can't believe anything that's going on around her. She seems to think that she's still sleeping, but when she goes to the mirror and drops her clothes, she gets a rude awakening. After some time, Mitsuha comes out to join her grandmother and Yotsuha for breakfast. Suddenly, the news talks about how a comet's headed down to Earth. But that doesn't seem to matter to Mitsuha. After breakfast, she gets ready for school and the sisters head out. On Mitsuha's walk to school, her friend Sayaka catches up to her, and she hears about how she was acting strange the day before. After a little while, they walk by a man giving his mayoral candidate speech, and he calls out for Mitsuha to stand up straight. It turns out that would be Daddy Dearest. I'm sorry, but you don't call out your kid in front of the entire town like that. That's the ultimate way to send your kid to a lifetime of therapy. When Mitsuha goes to the school, she notices questions in her notebook of someone asking who she is. Even the teacher and other classmates talk about how she forgot her name and locker the day before. Mitsuha can't believe what she's hearing, but she thinks that it was all just a dream. She thinks that she feels just fine, and Sayaka thinks that it might just be stress getting to her. After school, Sayaka and Teshi go to sit down and talk about their future, and Mitsuha walks straight home. When she gets home, she sits to thread the loom with her sister and grandmother, and the grandmother gives them a little bit of history of their family. Then grandmother talks about how disappointed she is with the girl's father for leaving the shrine of the family to play politics as the mayoral candidate. I can definitely sense the pressure of small-town family and politics. Where are you really gonna go? You've got to deal with everyone at some point. After an embarrassing traditional ceremony, Mitsuha calls out to the universe to make her a handsome Tokyo boy in the next life. While the next morning in Tokyo we meet Taki, and Taki doesn't seem to know who he is. He's more surprised to find something between his legs though. After getting ready for school, it becomes clear that this isn't really Taki, but when he steps outside, he's blown away by the city scenery. Taki walks to school, and he gets pulled aside by Tsukasa, who takes him to the roof of Takagi. They can't believe how weird he's being, but they go about their day like it's just another normal day. They invite Taki to a cafe afterwards, and he can't believe the life he's living. Suddenly, he gets a text from work and he heads to his shift. Somehow he makes it through, but he's a little too personal with some of his coworkers. Going off of how Taki seems to be on a normal basis, him asking his coworker to take her skirt off so he can mend it with needle and thread should be a dead giveaway that this really isn't the Taki they know. After his coworkers tell him that he's got a feminine side, Taki heads home and looks through the phone journal that the real Taki keeps. After thinking about it, Taki writes an entry in the journal, and we see that it's really Mitsuha in Taki's body. Mitsuha remembers the question in her notebook back in her body, and she writes her name as an answer on Taki's hand. The next day, Taki's back in his body, and he's confused and amazed to find a bunch of things out of place and different. Back in Mitsuha's body, she's appalled to find out that Taki was getting fresh with her body, and everyone at her school talks about a scene that she made the day before. Actually, after finding out what happened the day before, she goes through her journal, and she and Taki finally realize that all of this is actually real. Through a nice little music video, we see that they're getting an idea of who they really are in their own lives. I love that their first reaction is to make ground rules and a schedule to keep each other on. This is just another example of how anime rules should be rules in other movies and real life. If characters would waste less time being surprised and just get down to business, it'd be much more beneficial for everyone. Eventually, they get so good at being each other that they can actually make each other's lives a little better. But the one thing that they can't really shake is the idea of helping the other with a relationship. Eventually, they switch places on a day that they don't have to go to school, and Taki has to go with Mitsuha's grandmother and sister to their family shrine. When they get to the shrine, Mitsuo's grandmother gives her a relic to lay at the foot of the shrine as a way to ask for passage from this life to the next. On their walk back, they stop to watch the comet, but grandmother can see that Mitsuo is dreaming right now. Just then, Taki wakes up in his own body. When he wakes up, he sees that Mitsuo seems to have set up a date with his coworker, and he rushes to the station to meet with her. When he sees Okaderu, he's amazed at the sight of her, and Mitsuo begins to cry as she gets ready for the day. Taki's clearly never been on a date. It's so painfully obvious that Mitsuo actually left him links to date advice websites. By the end of the date, Okaderu can see that there's someone else that Taki seems to like, and he begins to think about it. After he's alone, he sees a note that Mitsuo left him about seeing the comet in the sky, and he calls her. Back on Mitsuo's side of things, she heads to a festival and she cuts her hair before she meets up with Teshi and Sayaka. During the walk, Mitsuo stops in a field when she can see the comet fly overhead. Back on Taki's side, he's sad to find that he and Mitsuo never switched again. Taki goes through his everyday life, but he spends a lot of time trying to sketch the village that Mitsuo is from and figure out where it is. After some time, Taki heads to the station where he finds Tsukasa and Okaderu waiting to go with him, and they all head to the village that Mitsuo is from. There has to be a catch here. This can't be so simple as him taking a train to her. I can't lie, me being the horror fiend that I am, I originally thought that he's been switching with the spirit of a dead girl or something tragic, but the reality isn't much better at this point in the story. When they get to a ramen house in the village, he pulls out a sketch of the harbor, and the owners of the ramen house talk about how they're from here. When Taki asks about it, he finds out that that's the location that was destroyed by the comet that fell from the sky. They head to the edge of town, but it's still barricaded. Taki looks out over the devastation that's what's left of the town. It's only now that Tsukasa tells Taki that the comet destroyed the town 3 years ago, and thousands of people died. When he goes into his phone to find the memo she left him, he watches as they start to fade away like she never existed. So technically, I wouldn't have been far off. It's only after they go back to Tokyo that he looks up death records, and he finds Mitsuo's name in the ledger. I need some more explaining, but I did a good job guessing this one. Taki refuses to believe it, and he continues looking through the ledgers. Eventually, he begins to think that Mitsuo was a ghost or he made up the whole thing. All of a sudden, he can't remember her name anymore. When Okaderu comes in, he apologizes for any strange beliefs he's thrown out there. In the morning, Okaderu finds a note from Taki that tells them to head back to Tokyo while he tries to find something that could solve this whole mystery. Taki takes a taxi up to a spot on the mountain, and he takes a path deeper into the forest. Eventually, he comes to the family shrine that he went to with Mitsuo's grandmother, and he begins to think that it wasn't a dream after all. I'm sorry, but if at any point in time I actually thought any of this could be a dream, I would not have gone this far. He's paid for train tickets, food, taxis, and who knows what else. I'm going to need a little more proof than it maybe being a dream. When he gets inside the shrine, he takes a shot of the sake Mitsuo used as an offering, and he falls backwards. During his fall, he seems to get a vision of the comet, and he falls deeper down the rabbit hole, so to speak. Well, if he thought he was dreaming before, he'll definitely think he's dreaming now. He gets a vision that goes as far back as the moment that they cut the umbilical cord from Mitsuo, and it goes all the way up to right after his last vision. It turns out that Mitsuo actually planned to leave and go to Tokyo after the festival, and as Taki calls out to her, we wake up to find him in Mitsuo's body again. He holds her body in his arms and he cries tears of joy. When he comes face to face with grandmother, she can immediately see that he's not actually Mitsuo. Grandmother tells Taki that she went through similar times, and Taki thinks that this is his chance to warn everyone about the comet. Taki heads to the school, and he spreads the word of the comet coming. Taki gets the help of Teshi and Sayaka to grab supplies and learn about the emergency broadcasting system. After Sayaka finds out that they plan to use explosives to plant a fake bomb to cause an evacuation, she agrees to go along with it. First, they go to Mitsuo's father, who immediately shuts Taki down. When Taki seems to lose it for a moment, Mitsuo's father can even see that it's not her inside her body. On Taki's way out of the office, he runs into Yotsuya, and he finds out that Mitsuo actually went to Tokyo the day before. When the others show up, he heads to the shrine, and Mitsuo wakes up in Taki's body to find out the town has been obliterated. While Taki keeps heading towards the shrine, we get a glimpse of the day Mitsuo went to Tokyo to look for Taki. While this is 3 years prior to Taki's timeline, she still manages to run into him on the train. Taki didn't recognize her at the time since his timeline hadn't happened yet, but when she gets off the train, she cries out her name. In the other timeline, Taki runs for the shrine, and he remembers that day 3 years ago. When he gets to the ridge, he can hear Mitsuo in the future and they try to find each other. Finally, as the sun sets, Mitsuo and Taki can see each other in their own bodies. After some classic anime verbiage, Mitsuo notices her ribbon that Taki kept for 3 years, and they enjoy a nice laugh as the comet heads towards the Earth. Taki tells Mitsuo the plan he set up with his friends, and Taki writes down his name in her hand so she'll remember. When she goes to write her name in his hand, the connection just stops. That's one of the most abrupt jumps in cinematic history. And now I'm sitting here wondering why Taki doesn't grab the marker and mark her name immediately. The idiot waits until he says her name about 5 times and forgets it. Back in Mitsuo's timeline, she races back to the village to carry out the plan. After faking a bomb explosion, Sayaka calls out over the emergency broadcast to ask the town to evacuate the high school that sits on top of the ridge. Mitsuo's father tries his hardest to stop the broadcast, but when the town sees the comet split apart, Mitsuo gets her father to convince him to evacuate the town like they had planned. When Mitsuo looks at her hand that Taki said he wrote his name in, she sees that all he really wrote was the words, "I love you." Mitsuo cries at the notion, but she continues to try and save the town. We cut ahead to see the comet hit the village on the far side of the harbor. In the morning, Taki finds that his body is still on the ridge, but he can't remember anything more. When Taki gets back to Tokyo, he applies to professional professions, but he can't help the itch he feels that he's looking for someone. It turns out that 5 years have passed since he went to the village to find Mitsuo, but he can't remember why he went there in the first place. He just feels like he's always searching for someone. That night while walking home, Taki thinks he senses something when he walks by a woman, and she senses the same thing. They keep walking though. Yeah, that's one of those moments where you just want to yell at the screen. At least I know I did. As more time passes, the day finally comes. Taki and Mitsuo get ready for their day, and they both head for the train station. When their trains pass each other, they can just sense it. I'm not the only one jumping in my seat saying, "Go get them." You are too, right? Finally, they find each other on a set of stairs in the town, and they just know that they've known each other before. Finally, they ask for each other's name, and the credits roll. I'm not crying, you are! In all seriousness, this is one of the movies that just proves that anime can have a way more impactful story and execution than some of the biggest Hollywood movies. Just go watch it, give it a shot. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.